Θα ήθελα τώρα καταρχήν να καλωσορίσω τον επίσημο προσκεκλημένο μας και θα έλεγα ότι είναι και το κεντρικό πρόσωπο στο βαθμό που ως εκπρόσωπος της ιταλικής εμπειρίας θα μας μεταφέρει την συνολική εικόνα της λειτουργίας της υποχρεωτικής διαμεσολάβησης στην Ιταλία. Πράγμα το οποίο για πολλούς από εσάς και τέλος πάντων τον κόσμο της διαμεσολάβησης αποτελεί ένα ορόσημο και το αναφέρουμε πολλές φορές ως πετυχημένο παράδειγμα, ως best practice, το οποίο ζητάμε και από την πολιτεία να αναλάβει πρωτοβουλία προς αυτή την κατεύθυνση. Καλωσορίζω λοιπόν τον κύριο Leonardo Urso, το οποίο είναι ο CEO του ADR Center Member of Downs International, και τον παρακαλώ να πάρει το λόγο, ζητώντας του να μας παρουσιάσει την Ιταλική πραγματικότητα.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you for the ΟΠΕΜΕΔ. As always, and the Chamber of Commerce. It's always a pleasure to be in Athens, and actually an honor to contribute to the discussion on the future of mediation in Greece by sharing my personal experience, my last 20 years, day by day experience in mediation, and experience of Italy in the last also 10 years. Italy has been a great laboratory on mediations. We change different legislations, and by trial and errors, I guess we found the right balance, the right recipe. And looking ahead, looking at the way how to shape the mediation in the future, my approach actually is looking back. So that's why I highlighted the words 20 years of analysis. As you, most of you know, the ADR movement started in United States, in California, about mid of the 70s, 40 years ago. And in mid of 90s, this movement was kind of imported in Europe. So we, in Europe, we have 20 years of experience of best practice, of few best practice, and a lot of failures, a lot of worst practice, I should say. So I don't think, I mean, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, this conference, the working groups, were based on opinions, on great ideas, on what we call wishful thinking. Now, the debate on the future of mediation is not about opinion, it's not about my opinion, how I think about mediation. It's about numbers, statistics. And let's look at the past, what has happened in Europe. So, one of the breakthrough actually in Europe after these 20 years, I mean, mid of 90s, end of 90s, when we imported this movement on ADR, you know that in 2008, the European Union started with the directives on mediations. And actually the goal, the objectives of these directives was to achieve a right balance between the numbers of mediations and the numbers of judicial proceedings. And by achieving this, the European Union gave some tools, ensuring the quality of mediations. One idea was, if we have a high quality of mediations, we will attract mediators, we attract mediations. So we have to accredit the mediators, we're trying to keep the service, the level of service very high. To promote referral mediation, the judge referral to cases, pending cases to mediations. Enforceability of the agreements was important in the directives, and keeping the confidentiality of mediation. And after 10 years, actually, from 2008, basically 9 years, the European Parliament asked, the jury committee actually of the European Parliament asked me and my colleague Giuseppe De Palo to write our report. And the report was, the aim of the report was actually, did the directive achieve this balanced relationship between mediation and judicial proceedings in all member states? Please, check the numbers. Go outside and gather numbers. Okay, so we gathered numbers, statistics from all member states. And actually our first idea was, well, first we have to measure this balanced relationship. Okay, how we measure? And we came up with the two index. And this was in this actual report. You can download for free from the European Union website. And our proposal is to understand if this balanced relationship was achieved. You have to look at two numbers. The first two index. The first index is a ratio, is the number of mediations divided by the number of cases in courts. Okay, you keep the easy formula. You keep the numbers of mediations every year and divided by the number of cases in court, of course civil cases in court each year. And you got a percentage. The second index that you should look at to is the success rate. Of course, it doesn't make sense to have a huge numbers of mediations with little success rate, 1%, 10%. So we come up with this matrix, and where there are the combination of the two index. And of course, the aim, the goal is being in the second quadrant of this matrix, where a jurisdiction with many mediation with a high success rate. So basically, we run these numbers and this index, and I give you one exercise in math. Let's calculate together the balanced relationship matrix in Greece. How many mediations have been last year here? A couple hundreds, 200s, 300s, let's say 500, more or less?
Let's say
200s, okay. Let's divide it, how many cases in courts you had last years? Millions? In Italy we have about 3.5 millions of new cases, of new incoming cases on civil cases each year. Okay, in your whole. So I guess, I don't know the numbers, but I think it's in the range of millions usually. 1 million pending cases. 1 pending cases, but incoming cases. We are talking about
incoming might be approximately
300,000? Oh, it's low. Anyway.
Yeah, sure.
In others, let's go. So basically, if you do this proportion, I think will be much less than 1%. Okay, so we run this exercise in all member states. In all member states, basically, we found that there was no balanced relationship at all. Actually, it was much less than 1%. So it means that each like 100 cases that incomes in court, just only one or maybe half goes to mediation. So we found, well, actually these directives didn't achieve the goal. It was a great milestone to start to talk about mediation, to have new domestic legislations. I'm working now also with the Minister of Justice in Serbia. Serbia, as you know, is the process to join the European Union. And the European Union, one of the criteria is you have to fix your civil justice, your courts. So there is a big project sponsored by the European Union to increase the efficiency of the civil justice. And they have a law. They had actually two different laws on mediations. And last year they had 30 mediations, 30 mediations. And they have about 1 million of new cases each year. So there is, it seems that there's been actually a failure. Another project that I'm running with CEPEJ. CEPEJ is the Department of to measure the efficiency of justice, civil justice at the Council of Europe. And just a few months ago, they set up a new working group on mediation. So this is a new great indicators that all European institutions, the European Union, the Council of Europe, and also other institutions are looking at mediation as one of the main tools, not the only tool, of course, but one of the main tools to increase the efficiency of justice. And also in this report that we will present in a couple of months, I mean, we are getting more or less the same numbers. Of course, the Council of Europe is done by 47 member states, so a lot, but more or less it's almost the same. The only exception, and I have to say it's weird, but is Italy. Italy, as I told you, we tried, it's 20 years, I mean, that we tried different laws, and my involvement in mediation started in 1998. When I came back from the United States, I assisted to a lot of mediations, and so I opened an idea center, and I thought, whoa, we will have a lot of mediations. I mean, there is a huge needs of mediations in Italy, zero. So my first, from 1998 to almost 2010, so it was a failure. So I had an experience of 12 years of failures, of frustrations. We did a lot of trainings, a lot of projects, but not really mediations. In 2010, our government, the Minister of Justice, in implementing the directives, the 2008 directives, instead of most of the countries, member states, implementing like lightly with the voluntary mediations, they introduced the first full mandatory mediations. Then this full mandatory mediation was declared in 2013 in constitutional by our constitutional courts, and because the lawyers challenged this law and they won actually. But then in 2013 we had a new law on mediation that I will explain. And this new law now is 4 years that we have, and it was just a few months ago, it was started as a pilot project, a pilot law with the sunset. It was supposed to be September the 20th of 2017, and just a few months ago, the government passed a law to have this law permanent. So it's permanent for life, okay, in Italy. And the goal of, we had, two goals. The first goal is decrease the incoming civil cases. So as I told you, in Italy there are about 3.5 million of new civil cases per year. And another goal was, of course, decrease the pending civil cases. We have about 4 million of civil cases per year, okay? With two different goals. The new law introduced 3 ways to start mediations. The first way is the opt-out model, or mandatory first mediation meetings. Basically, ours that in 10% of civil cases, not all 100% of civil cases, only 10%. It actually was a pilot by the time, and it was a pilot by the dispute matters. Like inheritance, medical malpractice, banking and insurance contracts, real estate, division of assets, defamations, and few others. In only these dispute matters, before going to court, the party had to, not going like the previous law, go to full mandatory mediation, but they had to sit down with the first meetings, with the professional mediators, for a small fee of 40 euro. Then, if the other party do not show up, the judge can sanction the party absent. So basically, if in the first meetings there are only one party, we issue a certificate saying who's present, and usually is the plaintiff. And with these certificates, the plaintiff can go to the court and can start, a judicial proceedings. And the judge must sanction the party absent. If both parties they show up with the first meetings and they talk about the opportunity to go to voluntary to full mediations, And if one party, they say, okay, I showed up, I met the other guy, but I don't think there is any room for settlement, and basically I don't want to, to spend money for the full mediation fees, I can opt out without sanction. So I fulfill my obligations to be present at this first meeting. And of course, for both parties agree to go ahead. They decide the fees of mediations for the mediators, and they have like 3 months with different sections to final agreement. Now, 50% of the time, the parties decide to go ahead with full mediations, just because they meet each other. A lot of times they don't meet each other. So this was actually a pilot in 10% of the dispute matters. In the other 90% of the dispute matters, there are still voluntary mediations. Is opt-in, what we call opt-in. So the parties have to sign voluntary an agreement to start mediations. It's more or less similar that your law. And this is in the remaining 90% of the cases. And then and of course, this opt-in model can work also for incoming cases and also for pending cases. I mean, even if you have a pending cases, you can voluntarily both parties go to mediations. And then we have a third, intake, a third way to start mediation is more than mediation, is mediation referral, is ordered by judge. So basically the judge can say it's up to his or her discretions, looking at the case, looking at the behavior of the parties, can order the party to go to attempt mediation. And usually because the two hearings, the duration, the time lapse between hearings are in Italy, depends on the court, of course, like 4 or 6 months. So basically what the order, the judge say, okay, before the next hearing, the next sittings, there will be like in 6 months, you go to mediation, so there are no impact on the duration of the judicial proceedings. If during the hearings you attempt mediation. So if in the next hearings you come back, the lawyers come back and say, okay, we found a settlement, thank you, they close the case. Otherwise, we go ahead with the judicial proceedings. So, guess what is the numbers of mediations, where they come from? After 4 years, from the opt-out model, 10% of the civil cases. From the voluntary mediations, that means promotions, voluntary, wishing of the parties, or by referral by judge. What do you think? Well, after 4 years, here there are the 80% of the cases of mediation that comes from the opt-in or from mandatory mediation. The mandatory first meetings. So on the 10% of the civil cases generates the 80% of mediations. The voluntary cases, actually there are 90%, are still 10%, actually less than 10%. Other more or less 10% comes from a referral. So this is the proof. I was talking about, look at evidence, look at statistics, look at numbers. That in the same country, means with the same lawyers, same companies, with the same culture, we have completely different results in mandatory mediation, and actually it's a mitigated mandatory mediation, voluntary mediation, or referral by judge. So this is proof that mediation do not come, unfortunately, from the culture. You cannot change the culture. There is, I can talk about hours about barriers to mediations, to voluntary mediation. There are a lot of reasons because the parties they do not voluntarily agree to settle. Okay, a lot of reasons. But let's go ahead. So with these two models, in the dispute matters where there is this mandatory first meetings, actually we have now more mediations than cases in court. Okay, we have the index is 114.